Yeah, so we're Backpack Brands now. We have two different cider brands and a Hard Kombucha brand that we're just launching. How I got into the industry, I started another cidery. We're up in Newburgh, New York, the Hudson Valley. We started right out of college. I had started another cidery with my father down in Maryland called Millstone Cellars, and that was back when, man, when like the brewery was big with bottles, and the sours were extremely sour. And we were doing all oak barrel fermentation and aging, sourcing all of our ingredients with 150 miles, doing all wild yeast fermentation. So, more sour cider, large format bottles, a little more aggressive than the stuff we're making now. Did that for about 5 years, and we, started distributing up and down the East Coast.
Yeah.
Our distributors up here in New York were very interested in us coming out with a canned product. At that point, I was kind of wanting to move in my own direction and started Graft, which is kind of a hybrid of what we were doing before, which was like more traditional European cider making. We're using wild yeast and bacteria, and then taking a lot of inspiration from the innovation we were seeing craft beer back then, not only in the flavors they were producing, but also the branding they were doing, like just really interesting labels, using the can as a canvas,
right?
And just constantly innovating, which it's worked. We're still here, and we're growing. We're hopefully out of this space soon, but COVID slowed everything down, as you know.
Yeah, totally, man. That was wild. Still wild for us.
A while.
The distributors asked you to come out with canned stuff, so they were just like, we need to, like, we're seeing pull from canned ciders, or were they just like, let's open up a new thing that people care about?
Yeah, I think at that time, and you see it now the bottle's like dead, right? Outside
Totally.
direct sales. And this was just at the beginning of that. That's when like everything was moving over to cans. That's when everyone was getting like Wild Goose, canning lines, and all the hype breweries were can exclusive, and like those can releases were like a thing every single weekend.
Yeah, going down to other half and standing in line for 2.5 hours.
Yeah. I was about to mention other half. We actually got, I was, good friends with them. We had done a collab with them with my old brand Millstone, and I was like trying to get the first run of cans, and they actually bought our first round of bright cans, like a tractor trailer load of bright cans from the manufacturers. We didn't have the relationship yet. So like a funny time. It was like, it was at the beginning of the like third wave of craft beer. So it was a really exciting time. Our distributors just saw the validity of where they knew where cans were going. And for us, I just thought it was the first opportunity we had to bring this style of cider to more people. Because when you're in bottles, 15 to 16 bucks, for a bottle of cider, that was like our baseline price. That's a big ask, especially if they only know cider as being Angry Orchard, especially back then,
Right.
This was 6.5, 7 years ago when we started Graft, and been making cider for about 11 years now. So I got to be one of the older people in the cider industry.
Totally.
Yeah.
But then I saw on the website you started Graft with your sister. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So Sarah, my sister, she was also involved with my first cidery. And when we decided to start this new cidery, she came on board right out of the gate. She was our, she's an owner, and it was me and her right out of the gate. And we just saw this opportunity for cider to be more. Back then the branding, I think, for cider was very boring. There was like one style of cider, I think, even on beer menus. I think Say, who's my fiance and was the third member, was petitioning beer menus to put more styles of cider on. And it was like cider, sweet, maybe dry. Like those are like the two categories. Right. And after seeing the innovation of beer, you're getting me back to my stump speech from like 6 years ago, but
I love it.
It's like there's like 150 styles of beer, and there's like one style of cider. And for us, I was like, cool, we can completely change the way people see cider, which, there's two schools of thought for cider: the traditionalists and kind of the new age stuff. And because we ferment more with, I guess, an old world technique, but then use like out of the box flavors. I mean, right out of the gate, we were using a lot of beer styles because we make a sour product. There's wild yeast, there's bacteria. It comes out to be somewhat similar to, you know, a barrel aged sour, or maybe even a kettle sour. And we were doing like a Goza style right out of the gate because we found that the salinity from the salt was really interesting. This was 6.5 years ago. Speed for today, we don't make a Goza anymore, but it shows you how we've kind of adapted and evolved with the changing and trends and kind of where the consumer's at.
Yeah.
Trying to stay on top of it through innovation.
How many SKUs do you think you guys have put out in your 6.5 years?
I actually was kind of writing that down. I didn't actually check it on Untapped to see how many we had actually made, but I believe we've done about 150 just with Graft.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, I was looking at, because we have not only Graft, but a couple other brands. I think right now we're putting out, just with our cider portfolio, 50 different SKUs a year.
Oof, wow, that's cool.
Which all kind of falls on, you know, to me to an extent, which is, you know, fun. I guess it's so fun. It's like, just like, Jesus Christ, man. Innovation, like, just the industry wants innovation. And we're really good at providing it. So I'm like, you know, if that's the most daunting process, that we need to keep innovating, so be it. That's what we're good at, you know. And
yeah, you guys have proven that you're good at it. So it might feel like a lot, but you're succeeding, you know.
You got to stick to, you know, where you think you know, we don't have the scale of like Angry Orchard, so we have to focus on other ways that we can win, you know.
Yeah, Angry Orchard, man.
Go to New York, so it was you know, all made up in the Hudson Valley.
Yeah.
Allegedly. You know.
Totally.
The showcase, you know, the facade.
Right.
Everyone's like, oh yeah, Angry Orchard, that's a New York State brand.
It's local.
Yeah, they do have a facility up, you know, they're 20 minutes away from us, but you know, I don't think they're making their their crisp, you know, in New York, or if they are, it's like Western New York or something like that. I know they do a lot in Cincinnati and stuff like that, but anyways, I digress. You know.
Who do you guys see as like your competitors, or like what would be a substitute? Like, is it other ciders, or at this point is it like is it beer, is it wine? Like who are you trying to get to drink Graft? So
Graft is, I think, a very unique product still, even in the cider market. And I think that's one of the reasons it succeeded, because it is so different. And while we've moved more into, like, with our innovation flavors, like cocktails and Amaros and like Nordic meads and sake ciders and stuff like that, that's really more innovation driven. And I still do think we are, for the beer consumer, that is just looking for something lighter. I mean, the advent of hard seltzers has made people want to drink lighter, less calories, less sugar. I mean, all Graft ciders are 3 grams of sugar or less pretty much across the board, if not zero. So it's a very dry profile. And if we're using fruit, a lot of the time, the majority of that fruit's fermented to full dryness. And then the other side of that beer drinker is the people that become celiacs late in life. Yeah. And now they love the flavor and the innovation of craft beer, but they can't drink beer anymore. And I think that's a huge draw. So, you know, you pose the question, like, is it wine? Is it beer? Is it cocktails? Like, I think at Graft's heart, it is just craft beer drinkers or innovation drinkers, people that want new and exciting flavors. And I think more and more of the younger generation is that way to an extent, or at least there's a segment of the consumer that always, you know, they're not buying the same thing, you know, they go buy everything once and then they'll go to the next thing, you know, which is why innovation's like at the key of what we do, which is, you know, some people get, you know, it's like kind of infuriating that you can't just be like, you know, like it was 15 years ago, you know, you make your lager and everyone likes your lager and they're buying the 15 pack or whatever. And
right.
That's it. Now it's a different ball game, and it's not going away anytime soon.
I mean, I think it's still accelerating, which is weird. You know, it's been accelerating for so long, and like how much?
I mean, we make hard kombucha now. Who would have thought? I wouldn't even have thought. I was just you know, they kept saying, "Hey, you should make." We can get into that later, but yeah, it's like, you know,
we can get into it now. Who's
sure.
they? Who's they that was saying like you
So
should
we
get into
position
this?
ourselves to, you know, I've always thought that I've loved the concept of having, you know, you know, my most exciting thing with working with in beverage is to do stuff where we're pushing the boundaries, where we're doing innovation, or we're finding a niche that just doesn't exist.
Mhm.
And to be that niche provider for our distro houses. So we distribute to 16 different states with Graft right now. We export to China, Japan, some of Europe. So, you know, we have this like large landscape that we kind of work to satisfy. And within our main distribution house, the Sheehan Group, which is about 6 of our states and our biggest markets, New York especially, we've worked to fill whatever need they don't have access to. So that's where Hudson North came from, which is our like, it's like we call it a dry hazy cider. It's more like a, you know, it's on the dry side of sweet. But Austin East, they have a original dry that's 9 grams of sugar. So I'm like, look, we'll be 8 grams. Every single product in 12 ounces, 8 grams of sugar. That's dry. You know, would I
Nice.
consider dry myself? Probably not. But there's I think there's 2 types of cider consumers. The more niche one drinks very dry ciders, and they think dry is like 0 to 3 grams, 4 grams of sugar.
Okay.
And then there's the ones that are down in Angry Orchard, down east, or Austin East. And they're, you know, Hudson North is the dry option. And that's why we crafted it, not only to kind of take advantage of, you know, a lot of those brands, those legacy, you know, craft cider brands were started over 6 to 7 years ago. And the market's moved so much drier since then. I thought, you know, ciders, those kind of cider drinkers are still looking for a comfort option. So 8 grams of sugar is still enough to bring to the table what they're looking for, but still much, much drier than the competition. You know, at least we're at least half the sugar of like a down east can, let's say, around 16 grams. So I think that was our main thing of innovation, because we don't want to innovate just to be New York. But then the other big piece was, you know, we're the Big Apple. We're the apple, you know, we're the largest grower of apples on the Northeast. And there was no dominant cider brand coming out of New York. All the major brands in New York City were Austin East and Down East and Angry Orchard.
Totally.
All out of state brands. So when they brought this up to us and they're like, hey, there is no well branded, well kind of like situated New York based hard cidery in our portfolio. At first they're like, hey, do you want to make a sweet Graft? And I'm like, no. You want better. And then about 30 seconds, you know, there's Down East, there's Austin East, Hudson North. All right. Easy. I mean, simplicity. I think though sweeter cider is like supposed to be simple. It's supposed to be kind of a carefree beverage.
Yeah.
It's comfort food. And I think that's kind of what we try to develop with that brand. And then enter Ritual Hard Kombucha, which we actually had to get a brewery license for, though in my mind, we'll never make beer. If anything, we'll probably get a distilling license next, since there's a lot of fun stuff on
totally.
that.
Yeah, man.
I don't want to ever touch beer. I think there's so many breweries out there. They're all doing
so
really
many
cool stuff. We want to do something that's completely different, you know, if they're going to zig, we're going to zag that way.
Right.
But the Hard Kombucha side, all the producers are out of the West Coast right now. So, you know, I had put off doing Hard Kombucha for a long time, because I'm like, you know, I don't know how I feel about the category. But then they showed me June Shine numbers in New York City, and I'm like, all right, well, I guess we get the licenses. So now we're making Hard Kombucha. And I mean, for us, we're putting our own spin on it. You know, while West Coast is all like sunshine and beach vibes, we're trying to do something more like grittier, like New York City dark, occult, apothecary. Things that are a little more, I think, true to the Northeast, I guess, way of life than the West Coast, and trying to make it feel a little different through our fermentation styles, through the flavors that we choose. And at the end of the day, just exploring really, really interesting flavors in more of this apothecary than tropical fruit and sunshine and all that stuff.
Got it.
Spin on it, because in my opinion, there's so much noise these days. To not stand out in a strong way is, you know, we don't have the budget of large corporations. We don't put a lot of money into marketing. So really, really solid brand creation and really solid innovation is how we've succeeded as a brand company, I guess.
How do you see that like the hard kombucha market maturing? Like, I live in Madison, Wisconsin.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so like this stuff,
Right?
yeah, it's like it's happening on the West Coast, happening on the East Coast now, pretty much
Kinda on the
because of you. So like, where do you see it going? Do you see like other people getting into it, or do you think people will stay away from it for a while because they're not familiar with it? What do you see happening there?
you know, it's a really hard category. It's kind of like, you know, hard kombucha came on the back of, hard seltzer, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we kind of see it is it's people that are looking for healthier alternatives, like a more better for you hard seltzer that's just not made from fermented sugar and that's it, with a little bit of extract, fruit extract thrown in there. Um, and will it follow the same kind of boom? And it's not really a bust cycle, but will it follow that same cycling? I think it's way too early to tell. I do think there will be continue, like, non-alcoholic kombucha as a category has exploded, and I think there's interest from people that are drinking that. I also think that the hard kombucha drinker is one of the most educated drinkers out there. So you can't bullshit them. You have to, like, we're going through organic certification, all this different stuff, because they're going to read the labels. They're going to care about what's going into that product. That's why they're drinking, I think, hard kombucha.
Right. Yeah.
So I think the consumer exists. I think anywhere you find a Whole Foods, I mean, that's one of the biggest mover of hard kombuchas out there right now. Will it become a draft play in 5 years? I don't know. I mean, hard seltzer's still not a draft play, so
Right.
not. The question is, is it a hype thing, or will there be fatigue? And we'll find out as well. We like to just, if we find a strong niche to get into, our distributors are behind it, we're like, sure, we'll try it out. We're like, our job, I think, is to make really good flavors and provide really great branding. And then if things work out, great. If things do okay, we just always need to kind of keep innovating as a beverage company based on where consumer trends go. And as you know, they're all over the place. And the evolution isn't 6 years anymore. It's like 2 years. I mean, the cycles are so sped up now because of social media platforms and all
month
that.
to month, it's crazy. Like last month, we had like the highest traffic to a single beer page. So a beer page on beer menus can be like a beer, a cider, a wine. Like it's a product page essentially, but just the way that we database it, it's beer pages. Busch Light Apple was the biggest one we've had in years. So I don't know what's going on.
Heard of it. That's
yeah. Well, I mean,
it's coming. It's I'm gonna hear of it soon enough, I guess.
Totally.
And then have people be like, "Man, I really like that cider." I'm like, "Okay, well, you're not gonna drink Graft, but have try this Hudson North then."
So you guys, you're finding these new niches, creating them in some cases. Have you tried anything that hasn't worked? Like that you're just like
we absolutely did. I mean, we had a whole brand that was actually very successful in New York City, but there's a lot of learning lessons built in it. We did a canned wine product called Flora Wines, and the product was really good, but we tried to approach it from a big producer mentality, where we tried to come out at a really fair price, to where our margin was very slim. We had to buy super large volumes in order to get the margins to where they were. And while, at some point they had sat us down, they're like, "Oh, like, look, you're outselling all other canned wines in our portfolio 10-1. Like even Babe Rosé was like the one, that was the next closest thing." And I'm like, well, if we're 10-1 and we can't make the numbers work, then we can get out of this category. Because what I learned was, we don't want to be the first ones into the category. We don't have the marketing dollars. And you're seeing canned wine continue to grow. We were in it 4 years ago. I mean, like, if we got into it now, maybe it would have been a different story. But it was a huge learning lesson. It was not like one of the biggest pain points for us. Not only was you had to buy like 350,000 units of the cans, but the can lid size, it was a slim can, so it would take us a half day to change over our canning line, and then a half day to change it back. And it was moving from like a pack tech product to a box product, and we didn't have the money to buy a boxing machine, so it's like $250,000, so we were hand doing it. So like we had to bring in extra labor. Like the whole thing was just, it was built to grow quickly, And I realized, like, unless you got the marketing dollars, don't go that. So we're more of an organic growth company and
Yeah.
really try to build our brands based off really great branding, really awesome flavors, and value price. And those are like our three big pieces that we always try to focus on now. So we learned our lesson, you know.
Yeah.
We got beat up a little bit. I mean, it was a great product. The branding was really good. You know, it was a lot of fun to make, and it was a hard decision to cut it, but and we may revisit it down the road. Just like right now, it's like Hudson North for us is just really chugging along. So we're like,
Nice.
focus on the winners, you know.
So where is Hudson North distributed throughout those 16 states?
No, so we're just, I mean, obviously it's a more price competitive brand. It's in a 6-pack versus a 4-pack. We're, you know, going up against like the Down East, the Austin East of the world. So we have to be priced comparably. So to expand past a certain distribution footprint, you're fighting up against other regional producers, which have the local kind of cachet, which is so big right now. I mean, local is like, I mean, one of the reasons we wanted to locate in New York was New York City is our home market. I mean, massive market. So it's a good one to have the local tag onto it. Also, the access to apples up here, and just, you know, there's a lot of innovative people. So being around that mind share is great. But then also with Hudson North, getting out of the local Northeast kind of bubble, you're also dealing with shipping costs. And then when you're already tight margin like that, you know, shipping costs will kill you. Like, you shipped out to California, be like $15 for a 6-pack. You're dead. You know?
That's not gonna work.
It is a commodity product. It is a craft commodity, but it is a commodity product. So you can't fight too much on that. But no, we are what? New York, Connecticut, New Jersey. We're about to add Maryland. We're Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Maine.
Okay.
I think that's it. I think we're in like 1 or 2 weird states, but I'm not gonna even count those because the volume is like
Nothing.
Like, yeah, here. I think we sent something to like Japan or something.
Sure. Cool.
They wanted something like they're like, all right, sure. We have or something. Yeah, no. But not but yeah. I mean, that brand, I think it's about 70% of its sales are in New York right now.
Got it.
But Mass is actually doing really well. I think the fact that we're so similar to Down East, but like a younger brand, you know, I think after 3 years, it gets really hard for a brand to keep reinventing itself unless they're constantly coming out with flavor innovation.
Yeah.
Or it's really hard. I mean, there's brands that can skip all that. And I mean, there's like, you know, your goal, you know, the golden child, like Allagash, who just has built this great cachet around their brand. You know, we're hoping to kind of do that with Hudson North, but you know, at the end of the day, consumers just see so much packaging, so many different flavors, and it just like, what are they in the mood for that day? And then how many
what did the bartender like recommend? What just came in? Like, it's so much of it is just like luck. You know what I mean?
Does the bartender even know that this product came in this day? You know,
right?
Like the menu hasn't changed over, but they can tell the people about it. So that's like one of the hard things is like, you know, you get into a placement, but the menu hasn't changed over, and it's kind of like a recommendation, like, oh yeah, oh, and we have this one cider. What's it called again? You know, it's like
it's called Grift.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it's not selling well. I'm like, well, there's no placement on the menu. How? It's up to the bartender to not only have a question come to them about cider, but then, you know, answer that there's more than just what's on the menu, and that takes a really astute and, you know, attention to detail bartender, which, you know, you hope all your bartenders are that good, but it just doesn't happen, unfortunately.
Especially right now with how much turnover that industry is continuing to go through. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they're like, yeah, after we were reopened after COVID, everybody who was working for us was 19 to 21 years old. And so they had no idea how to talk about this stuff.
Yeah. Knew about Fireball and are Jaeger bombs still a thing? I don't know. I think I'm showing my age right now. But,
yeah, I haven't. I was just thinking the other day. I don't think I've taken a shot in like 5 years. So that's where I'm at.
Whenever someone orders a shot, I'm like, can I sip this? Do I have to like shoot it with you? You know, like I want to enjoy it.
Yeah. Or maybe not if it's terrible.
Yeah, well, if it's terrible, then then geez.